IsItBullShit, that the US government is so concerned about coronavirus not because they think the virus is very deadly, but because they recognized we do not have the infrastructure to handle a massive outbreak. My sister runs a hospital department and that's exactly what they're concerned about. If someone comes in and tests positive, they have to be quarantined. And then anyone they came in contact with needs to be tested. Until the test comes back, those workers can't work. If one of them tests positive, then they have to be quarantined and everyone they contacted has to be tested. It's a vicious cycle of quarantine and testing and people not working while that's happening. They're scared of being understaffed and having a bus pull in with one person positive and having to deal with the aftermath. No country has the infrastructure to deal with massive outbreaks, which is also why countries shutting down schools and other public institutions are mainly doing it to slow the spread to a point where it can be managed. Yes, this is why flattening the curve is imperative right now. Can't flatten the curve if we don't know how many people are infected. We need mass testing or at-home testing. I disagree. We could start to flatten the curve if the majority of citizens were encouraged to stay home, work remotely, leave the house only when absolutely imperative. Edited to I wish I lived in a country, America, where during a pandemic, no one had to go to work because there was no safety net. I wish places weren't keeping schools open under the fear of how else will my kids eat. I stand by that everyone should be encouraged to stay home. And I wish we had a government that felt the same way and took care of its citizens. Shout out to Mark Cuban and NBA players who are making sure NBA staff gets paid even through the shutdown. I wish that was the norm. Yes, China's way was intense, but it got the job done, and they're seeing a drop in the disease. We should be staying home. There should be compensation if you're unable to do your job remotely. We shouldn't have to worry about kids starving at home. Crazy ideas. /view 200D. Not bullshit. Hospitals and insurers are panicking. The best possible outcome here is that insurers are forced to default and the government has no choice but to create another system. In a CNA at a large hospital in my area. That's exactly what we are worried about. We are having enough issues trying to find beds for our regular patients. They often sit in CDU, 24-hour hold area between her and their designated floor for 48 hours because we don't have the room. With the COVID-19 virus, we are concerned we are going to have an overabundance of admits with nowhere to put everybody. Plus, all schools in my area are shut down immediately for a month, affecting our staffing because of lack of childcare. So, in addition to our infrastructure, we also may not have enough staff to care for everybody. And as somebody stated earlier, if a member of staff contracts it, they likely passed it to others in heightened numbers due to the heightened inpatient to staff ratio, spreading it by the multitudes. It's a lose-lose all around. I'm a CNA at a nursing home and a nursing student. At my LTC facility we now have to take our temperatures when we come to work and sign a log. We have had massive call-outs in the last few days and the virus isn't even where I live. Yet, I can't imagine having any staff to take care of the patients if one of our workers catch it. At the hospital I do my clinicals at, us students are no longer allowed in ISO rooms to save supplies and the ICU is off limits to students. I don't go back to clinical for 2 weeks, so I have yet to see if we will have to take our temperatures or if they are planning on cancelling school. One of my classmates' husband is president of the college, and she said they are already having meetings about it. But I know the students help the staff a lot when staffing is short, which it has been. So it's kind of a tough call to make. We took my grandmother to the ER in FL for heart-related issues. She stayed in the ER for over 2 days before a bed opened up in the ICU. That's typical of the hospital I work at, and we aren't some podunk place. We are LVL1 trauma hospital for the region. We can't take any more burden. But covered don't care. It seems plausible. Italy has decent healthcare and responded aggressively, but people are still locked at home with their relatives' bodies. I hope to hell they at the very least won't be left in debt after all of this. We can't say the same for Americans under our current system. Yeah. This is the reason it's a big deal. This is what every other country has been discussing for the last month. No one has the infrastructure to deal with this unless we delay and space out the inevitable infections. That is part of the reason, and I will get there. But I want to explain why, so bear with me. There are many reasons America is scared of this. It has a long silent contagious period. So even if everyone is trying not to spread it, it will travel quickly, without the government knowing the extent of the infection. As such, the best solution is basically everyone, bar medical staff and a minimal crew, to run the country's infrastructure to isolate, so it can't spread further. In America, most people don't get sick pay, have a limited number of sick days, and can't afford to miss a paycheck. Many of them can't afford to feed their child/pay for child care, even if they are working. So closing schools is going to make a lot of people desperate for money. As such, most people in America cannot afford for schools to close or to self-isolate. Secondly, healthcare in America means even if people wanted to, they are unlikely to pay the huge, I've heard reported $3,000 for a coronavirus test cost to get themselves tested to find out if they do have it. So we are almost certainly not going to be able to track it. The only country which has managed this crisis better than a toddler in a room of landmines is South Korea and China. Taiwan, Vietnam, who started a massive and aggressive testing campaign to try and quarantine anyone who is exposed. The net result is that it is very likely that the majority of the people in most countries are going to get it, billions worldwide. Frankly, it seems likely that essentially everyone in America who doesn't self-isolate in the home for the entire duration is going to get it. The good news is 80% of people will just get a sniffle, feel unwell and get over it, likely spreading it further as they don't know they are contagious. The other 20% need hospital beds. In the winter, hospitals are running close to capacity, so there aren't many spare beds. When the 20% get hospital treatment, the fatality rate is 2-3%, mostly the elderly and those with other health issues. But if the 20% don't get hospital treatment, then the fatality rate might rise closer to 20%. Edit. Expanded list of countries which have handled this well. As of 2018, Army Corps of Engineers gave the U.S. infrastructure a grade of D. My mom's a nurse too, and the county over just had its first case. She's definitely voiced similar concerns. Italy is overwhelmed, and they have a good healthcare infrastructure that has scared people in the US. Our response to testing has been worse than almost every other country that is dealing with the virus. Trump and his administration have totally ducked this up and made it way worse according to the health experts. Not bullshit, I mean. We're absolutely concerned about the deaths, but our limited infrastructure is also a severe problem that will lead to far more deaths than necessary. There have been several government reports over the last few years assessing our pandemic preparedness, and they all found it severely lacking. The Trump administration is currently trying to prevent the release of the latest such report. Obviously that means they did nothing to remedy the problem. We don't have the infrastructure or leadership that is needed. No country has that infrastructure because the resources for that need to be in the pockets of kleptocrats. That's not exactly correct. Our current government is only concerned about the economic impact. They're perfectly fine with people dying outside of abortions. As a medical professional, I can tell you that your mom is completely right. No country is really prepared for this. And the strain is already terrible on the system at this time every year with the flu season. The other massive issue for President Trump is that he thinks that, as long as he can claim that America has never been better and the stock market is booming etc., that he will cruise to victory in the 2020 election. Bearing that in mind, President Trump is freaking out about coronavirus because he initially dismissed the whole virus as another Democratic hoax, which isn't. Obviously, he screwed up again. Then it turned out that the government was so badly coordinated and run that they had allowed a bunch of military personnel and government officials to get off of a naval vessel, which had just come from China, and scatter across the country without any health checks or quarantine. They already knew about coronavirus at that time, so that was stupid and reckless to say the least. Trump carried on with the usual lies and denials, and insisted that the thing was a hoax, and even if it was real, it was no big deal. His government and presidency is perfect, as we all know. So now the virus has been running amok all over America for over a month, before Trump even acknowledged its existence. Infrastructure is going to come close to collapse. There will be many deaths. Schools, colleges, workplaces, courts, Congress, etc. may have to shut down. You get the idea. People are already acting crazy and panic buying. It might not be inconceivable that looting and rioting could come later. Now people are finally realizing that Trump is an idiot that has no idea what he's doing, and his lack of intelligence and leadership is directly responsible for the coronavirus chaos that's currently unfolding. As Trump only cares about Trump, he doesn't care about any of that, or what ordinary Americans will go through. He is panicking now because he can see the stock market crashing and recession looming just in time for the 2020 election. So yes, it will probably be a shit show, but Trump's only concern is himself. That seems plausible, but there's not a way to prove it or disprove it. The US also doesn't have the same control over the population that an authoritarian country like China has. It's not as easy to isolate entire towns and force families into strict quarantines here. That means outbreaks would be harder to contain. True, that's part of the reason why they were begging everyone to get flu shots, cause they knew they couldn't deal with both at the same time. Not bullshit. Italy is currently choosing who to try to save because they don't have enough ventilators and other equipment. The Twitter tag that needs to trend IsItBS. This is part of the truth. Yes, we are ill prepared to handle the most basic requirements to curtail the spread of this virus, mainly testing. But don't forget that Trump is an incumbent president who is trying to get re-elected in November. In any situation where there is an incumbent president running against a challenger, it is his job to say to the country, hey look, the country is doing perfectly fine. Why change anything? It's really hard to do that when people are sick and dying, others can't work, and the economy is at its lowest point since 08. If we had begun preparing in January knowing that it could and likely would spread to the US, then we could have had enough tests prepared and had accurate numbers to determine that self-quarantine should have happened a month ago. But this admin is full of dumbasses and led by an egomaniac dumbass also. So that's why we're here. Yes, our infrastructure can't deal with the current crisis, but had we dealt with it appropriately, this could have been mitigated. We said China was handling the response poorly and then went out and did exactly what China did. With Trump in power, the govt is concerned that it might kill the market and rich people would become less rich. In Ireland everyone is told to stay put if they are suspected of having coronavirus. If they need medical assistance then they are to phone the emergency helpline and a paramedic is sent out to them, thus decreasing the amount of people they come into contact with and also allowing the hospital time to set up quarantine area. Our hospitals are in an awful state without the added pressures of an outbreak. My local general hospital ranks now one the worst in the country time and time again. You can expect to be left on a trolley, no matter your age or condition, for days. I hope that these measures that Ireland are taking are enough. I hope everything you are doing in the States is enough for your sakes too. Stay safe. Wishing you all good health. They're scared because they're all old as shit. The best arguments I have seen have been 100% this. They aren't terrified of X volume of people getting sick. They are terrified that X volume of people get sick at once. Even at my work. We have a staff of 6. One person calls in. It sucks but we handle. 2 people call in. We are dying. But we can push it through with delays. 3 people call in. and we are all working with close interaction. If one gets sick, we all are at risk. In fact, by the time one person gets sick, it is probably too late for the rest of us. Especially since knowing the above, we have to be pretty sick before we admit it. I'm not from the US, but this is actually a global concern. In America, there is only concern for poor people dying if they have a disease that affluent people can catch. It's not so much about not having the infrastructure. The infrastructure is perfectly suited to handle many cases of coronavirus. The problem is that the infrastructure is built to handle only so many cases at once. Say a city has 100 ICU rooms available to use and typically uses 40 to 50 any given day. If 10,000 people have a case of disease where 1% need an ICU unit, the city should be fine if those 10,000 cases are spread over months, but if they all happen within a couple weeks, the system is overloaded. The US is not ready to handle a massive pandemic anytime soon. In fact, no places are. Soon all medical infrastructure will be overwhelmed. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.